Well, while my team is getting set up, I'll read the disclaimer. This is not a diagnostic class. If you feel like you need one, reach out to one of us. If this is a safe space, this is your journey and no one else's. Please take this time to share just your journey. If you are triggered for any reason, please feel free to reach out to one of our mods. If you are taken down for any reason, a mod will reach out to you. This is a mental health guide to well-being, not to be used for diagnosed. So today is Mental Health Action Day 2022. The focus of today is connection, community, back to basics, and tools. As of December 7th, 2021, the national standards had declared a youth crisis in mental health because of the effects of COVID. So we're going to take a bit and introduce ourselves. I am Kate Young. I'm from AMP Education. I've been working in mental health for a little over 15 years now, started with child development. I'm going to hand this over to Danielle Peterson, who's going to introduce herself.
I am Danielle Peterson. I am a school counselor currently who works with our At Promise returning high school students ages 16 to 25. And I have been working with students in our education system for about 13 years.
Okay, and then next is Dr. Sherry Center.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sherry Center. I have done a variety of things. At the moment, I have a consulting company called Dr. Sherry Center LLC. We work with management advisement with educational programs, as well as children with learning differences. And I also, at the moment, are working with Sylvan Learning. And I specialize in children that really have some learning difficulties with ages from pre-K all the way through school age.
Okay, and next we have Dr. Sherry Sedler.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherry Sedler. I've worked with youth for over 25 years now in a variety of schools in a rural school setting, and then retired from a clinician being in a high school. And through those experiences, got a really incredible lens of trauma work. And so then pursued my doctoral degree and then do contract work with the state now. I have a private practice. I do consulting services with the school for compassion fatigue, helping the staff really reduce the impact of stress and burnout. And then I also am now working with AMP Education, really promoting mental health and wellness. So thanks for all you're doing.
Well, next we have Dre.
Hey, how's it going, y'all? So my name is Dre, and I'm a local hip hop artist and activist for the city of South Lake Tahoe. I do a lot of work in my community with students and with the mayor and city council to try to just bring us together and bring awareness to community and how to just be creative artistically as well. So I do a lot of like mentoring up at the high school and such. And AMP Education is one of the sponsors that we have as far as like uniting our community. So her and I both have some history with Tahoe, and I'm also happy to just be here and kind of like bring some awareness to mental health issues that a lot of us men are facing in particularly. So glad to be a part of all of this, and thank you for having me.
All right, and then next is Jessica Whitmer.
Hi guys, I'm Jessica Whitmer, and I am the founder of the Self-Love Club on Facebook. It's a group on Facebook where I talk a lot about my journey with mental health, more or less to normalize things, to let them know how to find resources. And it's been a big thing. It's actually how I met Kate, and I have bipolar, and that's the story that I share with them.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks.
Next is Mandy.
Hello, everyone. Mandy Gonzalez here. I have kind of a unique background. Used to work with young children. That's actually how I met Kate many moons ago. My own personal journey with mental illness and mental health. And I'm actually a training specialist, and I also teach courses for community college and universities on emotional intelligence, soft skills development. I am a training specialist for Gallo Winery here in the Central Valley of California. I myself have a teenage son who did not do well through COVID, had a depressive episode, and has been struggling with mental health with a father who was injured in Iraq. And so just personal kind of journey and things that I've learned through that. So dealing with it myself and supporting my son and other kids that I've met along the way. So just glad to be here. I'm glad that we're sharing this topic. And definitely, you know, eye-opening to see such a variety of people here. So I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so glad you guys are all here to talk about this really important topic. We are going to get into some of the major factors here in a minute and take us right into this and do some measured breathing. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with measured breathing. Danielle, do you do that with your students?
So it really depends on what the student is what they're particularly going through, what issues they may be dealing with. Sometimes measured breathing is a great way to handle it. Sometimes it's not. I do breathing but I do a lot of finger tapping.
Gotcha. A lot of the physical touching. I use breathing for myself, and I encourage a lot of my students to learn this. Who else would be good for this trait, do you guys think? Sherry's?
You froze up on me there for a second. I didn't get the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Sorry. When we're looking at measured breathing, who do you think would be most benefited from this?
Well, I'm a little biased. I think we all can benefit from it.
Okay. Well, I agree with you. And that's why I'm going to go ahead and teach a little bit of it. And if I get anything wrong, don't anybody hesitate in letting me know. But measured breathing or box breathing is breathing in at an even and then breathing out even and then holding between those even. So you're going to breathe in for an even amount of time, hold for an even amount of time, breathe out for an even amount of time, hold for an even amount of time, and then repeat that. Sherry's, why? You want to take a stab at that?
Sherry Sedler or Sherry Center?
Either one.
I'm letting you take the lead on that.
So repeat the question for me, Kate, because I wasn't sure.
Why do we do this? What does this help?
It helps regulates our autonomic nervous system.
So I like to take it, hijacking the brain back is how I refer to it, because often when we get that amygdala, which is that flight, fright, or freeze response, and I speak English, I swear, flight, fight, or freeze response, that is triggered by all sorts of things. And this is what helps us take it back, grab that amygdala back into control. And so I would love to have Jessica. Can you lead us in this? Do you feel confident?
In breathing?
Yes. Could you do a box breathing?
I'm not sure. I usually, I don't know what you call it. I usually do an ocean breath.
Okay.
So,
what's that?
Where you're breathing in 4 seconds, and then you're breathing out, and you're breathing out for 6 seconds, but you're pushing as hard as you can. So it kind of sounds, I feel like you might be the one that taught me this.
We may have.
There's a good chance, but the ocean is something that I use myself to, just thinking about it in general helps center me. So to hear it when your eyes are closed and really feel like I'm there does bring me back.
Nice. All right. Well, I asked you to do ocean breathing, and I have a picture of a mountain for our breathing exercise. So do you want to try doing it to a mountain this time? I'm
gonna let you take it.
You want me to lead it? That's
yes,
fine. I'll lead it on the mountain scene.
Thank you.
With our mountain scene now here with us. We're gonna do some box breathing. So we're gonna breathe in for 4. You can shorten this time or lengthen this time to whatever feels comfortable to you. So if a 3-second or a 2-second is more appropriate for your breathing, do that for you. This is to be a tool for you to use to help you center and comfort yourself. So you're going to breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to hold it. 2, 3, 4. Let out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Repeat again. 2, 3, 4. Let it out. 2, 3, 4. Breathe it in. 2, 3. Oh, I missed a hold. I missed a hold. So you can see, hold, let it out. Just let it out. But you repeat this process a couple of times, and this helps your brain get back in control. As Dr. Sherry was saying, get that regulation back. And you can do this anytime. Jessica, when do you do your breathing?
This is something that I use most of the time. I'm in my car, honestly, when I need this. It simply calms me. Anytime I'm feeling jittery, I'm not able to push forward with what I'm doing. I have a tattoo of the ocean on my forearm, and it reminds me to breathe. Nice.
So you get that physical touch with your tattoo, and then help it remember to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I like those tools, my dear. All right, next slide, Sean. So in the big news today, we get to announce, starting in July, on the 16th, a new 911 number. So if you are in a mental health crisis, you can, instead of dialing 911, dial 988. This is true across the nation. It will take you to a mental health hotline that is done by the Mental Health of America, and they will help provide resources from there. So I thought that's a pretty cool new resource. I know Mandy was talking a little bit about her teenager. One of the biggest tools we were offering right now is this text for mental health. And that number is on the bottom of the screen. It's 741-741. And that number is utilized to text the Mental Health of America as well. And that goes for anything from, oh my God, I'm in the middle of a crisis, to, I think I might need something diagnosed. And this is something we're pushing especially for the high schooler kids. So Mandy, this is one I definitely suggest for your little guy.
So I text with my students quite regularly. I find that it's a much better way to communicate, or to at least get them to communicate. So if I call them and they don't answer the phone, or I've tried to get them in my office somehow and they're like super crafty. I mean, nobody really wants to talk about our problems, and get to the root of it is really hard and painful sometimes. So I do a lot of texting at like all hours, and sometimes I'll reply in the middle of the night and sometimes I won't. So definitely, I guess I can share my work phone if anyone's in like desperate need to text and that number doesn't work. We have cell phones that our company actually provides for us. so that we can communicate just with students and other staff, which is really great. But I do definitely think it's easier to put it into writing sometimes. It shouldn't stay that way all the time, in my personal opinion. You can't just solve everything over text, but it is a good way to initiate conversations.
Exactly. Start that conversation. Start that hard conversation. Get yourself some tools. And later on, we will resource dump on everybody. I've got 3 pages. We're all so excited. That we'll get into, that has more nationwide and local resources attached to it. So we'll carry on. Look at that. It's a shooting star. So this is to get into the meat of mental health stuff. We're going to get into some of those facts and get into the averages around mental health and mental illness. So we'll take us into that. I'll do a sound effect. So what is a mental health? It is a spectrum. You can have good days and you can have bad days. I can attest, I can have that same spectrum within one single day. Danielle probably went through that driving home. She probably started off on a glorious mood and then ended in a poor mental health state at the end of her drive home today. So
I have to keep a gratitude list in my head. That's what works for me. I have to do that. I think as Dr. Center, I believe, Sedler actually was saying about compassion fatigue. So I keep a very big list that I constantly have to tell myself, which I think is important, I think, for everyone, whether we suffer from mental health or from compassion fatigue, is I really don't like the saying, and you know this, Kate, I hate when people say like, it could be worse, because I feel like that is such a horrible thing to say to someone at a bad place. It really turns people away from you. And I know when someone says, you're like, it could always be worse, that doesn't mean this isn't my worst. So I try and keep a list for myself that's really positive. And sometimes I'm grasping and I'm like, thank you that I can breathe. Like sometimes I really have to like grasp for that, like that list. But I definitely, that's how I get through it. But I do think, if anyone feels that they're going to be, at least by our panel, turned away for saying, or someone's going to point out like it could be worse, that's definitely not the case. And
you do have to have little tricks and things ready for you to have a bad day. And that's part about learning about good mental health, is knowing what to do to help yourself. Like you said, you have your gratitude list. You've got a couple tools that you utilize to make your day a better day. Dr. Sherry Sedler, I'll direct this question at you. When we diagnose somebody, what are we waiting for?
We're looking at duration. We're looking how it impacts different facets of their lives. It's not a quick jump in and say, oh, you must be feeling this, you must have major depressive disorder. It's multifactored, and it is seeing how long it's been going on and how many elements are really playing out in their lives. We don't want to make a quick diagnostic judgment.
And for the other, Dr. Sherry, I'll ask you this question. With the little guys, when you're diagnosing, you heard Dr. Sedler say it's not a fast process. Is it faster or slower with the little guys?
I think it's a slow process. I really do a lot of observations before there's any diagnosis or even looking at it. I have a little one that I've been working with all week, and going home with tears in my eyes because of the pain that he's experiencing. And of course, we all know we take it home with us and experience the same pain that the little one's experiencing. But no, I think it's a slow process. I think it's really a lot of observations. It's over time. It's over different times of the day, different days of the week, interactions to try to get more clarification as to where they're coming from.
Excellent. For anybody else who's looking for a diagnosis, is this going to be a month long, a year long, 5-year long? Anybody want to talk about that?
I don't know how you put a time frame.
You don't really put a time frame, right? Because it could change.
There's a really great book, and well, it's a great book that I like to refer to students, called The Body Keeps the Score, with the misconception of like time heals all wounds. So say you're in a small town. I happen to grow up in Lake Tahoe as well, so I know, and there's a lot of stuff that can happen, or even if you're in a big city, and sometimes you bury it and time doesn't heal all wounds. Time just makes that pain seem less and less and less and less, but it could just be building and building and building. So I believe that there are different answers to the question that you're looking for. Like some people, like Jessica, may have a bipolar disorder. Some people may have experienced trauma and that's been weighing on them for years and we don't know about it. So I think that question has a lot of different answers. So I don't know. I'm not equipped to answer that completely, but maybe one of the Dr. Sherry's probably is. But for me, I think that time makes things just build and build. And so that's where that would come in.
I would side with that. Anybody else?
I'd have to say I'm not definitely at the mental health professional level, but experiencing trauma myself, that book was life-changing, just to put that out there as a resource. Some absolutely incredible resource. But not everybody, seeks out those things. And so I think it's true that, you can go on and your body goes into survival mode, depending on what you're dealing with at the time. But it will rear its ugly head in many different forms. And I think a lot of people learn to survive and to bury it. So sometimes there's people, I've seen people now that were like, oh my gosh, I just finally am at a place in my life where I can, let my guard down and I'm in agony. And it's like they're in their, 40s or 50s and they've never dealt with childhood trauma. So yeah, I don't think, just based off of my experience. And so because of my experience, I look at my child and I've had him in counseling since he was 8 years old and tried to help him. And he still went through, difficult times. So I don't know that, maybe if I didn't know, maybe it'd be different, but I think definitely I can experience myself, we definitely go into survival mode. And so however our body, manifests at a later date, a later time, but the body keeps the score. What an incredible title, because it just doesn't go away. It is always there. And, somehow you just walk around that elephant in the room. I think we've all, probably have experienced that, but highly recommend that book as a resource, Kate. That's one that I read it and then I got it on Audible because I wanted to listen to it again. I've recommended it to so many people. It's such a great resource. Thanks for calling that out. That's a good one.
Thank you for sharing, Danielle. That was a good one. Anybody else?
I just want to say, I know that when we're in crisis or we're really struggling and we go to seek to someone for support and solution, we are in a society for quick fix. I can Google something like in 2 seconds to try to get a solution and figure out what I need to do differently. So I know it's hard to say when I say, well, I want to take an approach. I want to do observations. I want parent input. I want school input. Maybe I'm going to do some screeners and I'm going to build a relationship and I'm going to look at your diet. I'm going to look at how you're sleeping. I'm going to look at how you interact socially. I'm going to look at if there's some trauma. And from someone else who's just eager and dying to get a resolution or some sort of idea of what am I dealing with, I know that's hard to say, well, it's going to take some time. And I think in hindsight, it's because we want to do it and make it fit to meet your needs, to really give you the benefit of what's going on and really try to give it a holistic approach so that you can get some relief. And I know it's hard to wait for that. That's the scary part. Yeah, because we want to feel better. Like, now I came to you, so what's going to happen now? Give me a magic pill. It's like, I don't have a magic pill. I really don't.
important to note, though, if you do need a medication and you are prescribed your medication, that it's important to take it, but it also is not going to be a quick fix either. And you have to couple that with everything that Dr. Sedler is saying. It is, and this is a great topic that we're finally bringing up, because before it was like you had to hide this, or you really didn't acknowledge it, but you wouldn't walk around with a broken leg and everyone be like, oh, it's cool, just hide it. Like, you're fine. Like, don't go to the doctor. You're fine. Just brush it under the rug. Like, you wouldn't just like walk around with like your bone sticking out of your leg. So in my opinion, this isn't really any different. You're in agony, or if you're in pain, or it's the same.
Yeah, it affects a lot of us. And to be walking around that broken and hurt and not have it addressed for a long time. Yeah.
I think people throw that word around a lot, and so people don't take it like, oh, people are just, oh, she just has anxiety, like it's just, and I think when you have it, you notice it more in people. I've had to learn over the years how to handle and deal with my anxiety, and I realized that it came from trauma. My anxiety comes from the trauma that I've experienced, the triggers. So you learn about, again, if you have anxiety, if you can learn, kind of how it manifests itself. But it definitely, I think everybody thinks that they have anxiety. People self-diagnose anxiety. I think there's a lot of triggers out there that create anxiety for most people. Even in my children, I see it, they have anxiety, social anxieties, or different things that cause triggers. Definitely in a social media world, a lot of pressure, a lot of peer pressure, things that are out there. But myself, just over the years, I've kind of learned what triggers me. And I think that's helped me sort of figure out, okay, so if you're going into a stressful situation, what are you going to do to prepare yourself, and how are you going to cope? And everybody's talked about like tapping and breathing and different things. My counselor over the years has taught me those. I've actually recently done EMDR, the rapid eye movement. And that has been phenomenal with trauma to help me with some of my things. So that has kind of created a sense of peace in my life. But again, you have to seek those things out. You have to really do the work. And a lot of people, I think, just it's too painful, it's too much work. So but that's just me.
I think it speaks to also how many of us are walking around anxious, and the difference between anxiety disorder and anxious, because I can be anxious, but what does a disorder really mean? Like, what does it mean to take it to that level?
This handy dandy book tells you.
I love it.
I was like, wait a minute. This
book looks very loved.
It's been used quite a bit. I can tell you exactly what the DSM tells me that we need to acknowledge for the criteria to make that diagnosis. But I'm not sure that that's something you would like me to go through right now.
No, but it's more than just being anxious.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So
Yep.
if I'm walking around anxious a couple of days, I still probably shouldn't be worried that I should be diagnosed. I should be looking for
Anxiety is telling you something, right? Something's going on. So it's just to be mindful of what is it coming up in the context that it's coming up, and how can I manage or handle it. If it's way too much ahead of me, then it starts impacting other facets of your life, where now I'm avoiding people or things or places. We might want to talk about that.
I might want to start addressing it. Exactly. Well, thank you for that. We're going to move on to the major depressive episodes. I can speak English, I promise. Major depressive episodes. So what we would term depression affects 7.8% of the population, which is approximately 19.4 million people. Does this seem surprising to you? Dre to Dre.
No, that doesn't seem surprising to me. I guess actually, yes, a little surprising because I almost thought the number would be even higher.
Why?
Just because of the social climate that we've been in as of recent. I mean, even just in the last 18 months or so, when you talk about how people feel politically, the COVID, the vaccines, the way that there's been a huge divide between which way people lie, I feel like that puts a lot of stress, anxiety, and depression upon people because they feel like all their morals and everything are all being completely judged, no matter which side that they're on. And then when you have our youth more sucked into social media than ever before and their phones, and that feeds them a lot of the same things that would perpetuate all of that. So I talk with people, from ages 8 to 50 constantly because I do all these different events all over the world, and depression and anxiety is something that comes up in conversation a lot. So I actually kind of thought that number was going to be higher.
I honestly think it will be. These are numbers were collected in 2020. So I anticipate to see another climb in that depression, especially given like you talked about, the social and emotional environment we're in. So I do see that happening. Moving us along, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder affects 3.6% of the population, which is an estimated 9 million people.
Yeah, I think we're going to have that number increase a lot too. I think we've had our youth, adults, middle schoolers, high schoolers, elementary schoolers all kind of be stunted in emotional growth and development in some aspects of one or another through COVID. I think there's a misconception from a lot of people that PTSD only affects soldiers. So I don't think people really realize how much PTSD can affect people who have been through any trauma. And so I'm surprised. I would think it would actually be higher than that as well. Like I said, I think I work a lot with domestic violence survivors and a lot of with my population that I work with as well. It's a lot of kids who are foster youth, or for one reason or another, their high school career got derailed and now they're coming back. And I think a lot of our younger adults or even adults don't realize that maybe they have PTSD or that's what they're suffering from, that it's situations that need to be worked through. But I'm sure one of the Sherry's is better equipped to handle that. I just know I deal with it a lot with my students who have, for one reason or another, like I said, been derailed. And when they come back, they don't recognize what they've gone through as a trauma, that they would be suffering from PTSD. And I think it's important to also point out that PTSD can be treated. It's definitely not an overnight thing, but it's also not something everyone has to live with forever. And but it does take that work putting in. So I think a lot of our students have it.
I could see that. A lot of them experience a lot of stress and trauma. And with
on that too, I saw that in the chat.
You saw that in the chat?
Yeah. Mandy, didn't you have a couple comments on that?
Oh yeah, when I was thinking, so my ex-husband, my son's father, did 3 tours and was injured in Iraq, and came home with PTSD every single time, but I didn't really know what it was. And it basically was a marriage ender for us. And just the long-term effects of that. So to Daniel's point, like most people hear that word, they think, oh, well, that's, synonymous with soldiers, with combat. I definitely saw it firsthand. And what they were doing to treat soldiers with Seroquel and some pretty strong medications. My ex-husband had paranoid delusions and night terrors, and you name it, he had everything under the sun. And so experiencing that through him, seeing that through him, what he's been through over the years. And then, I think people sometimes think, oh, well, I just, I have PTSD from this. And they just use the word loosely, not really understanding that it is truly a diagnosis and it's something. And for him, it was a career ender. And it's a word that means I can never do what I did before ever again. And so the seriousness of, combat PTSD and what it did for him, I don't take it lightly at all. So I get kind of perturbed when people will just say like, oh, that just gave me PTSD, and it's like, it's actually very serious. It's actually, a very serious diagnosis. People that have been through trauma, even being in a car accident, you can have PTSD, and I understand that it is trauma. Trauma is trauma. And, a lot of people have that. So just me personally experiencing that, and my son experiencing that, and seeing his dad when he was younger, when he came back, he was completely different. And, the therapies and the treatments that you have to seek out, because they're not just there, even as a soldier. Like we put him in a Menlo Park trauma center for 3 months, where they did animal therapy, music therapy, art therapy, what is it called? Where they do like exposure therapy, you name it. I had him in every group and everything, but it's lifelong. It's not something that, I think he'll ever recover from. So just my experience with that and some of my trauma from my childhood and some things, I almost feel guilty when I say, well, I have some trauma, because I feel like his trauma was way worse. But I think it's misunderstood, and I think people have kind of used it loosely, but I think there's definitely an opportunity to teach and educate and make people aware of what it actually is. And you're right, there is treatments, there are things. A lot of what he went through, because he had traumatic brain injury as well, so he had to be on so much medication that, it's taken years to unravel him. And to this day, I think that, he won't do what he needs to do, because in the military, that was, you need to suck it up, pretty much. And so there's that negative connotation, I think, in a lot of arenas. And what we're talking about is, you can't be mentally ill and be a killing machine. So it's definitely destroyed him and ruined, his career and what he set out to do in life. But I think it also brought up, when he was dealing with it, it brought up childhood trauma for him. So it's interesting how a significant event can also trigger what we saw is also triggered some childhood things that he'd never dealt with. So for instance, an example was he would see dead bodies and he would just move on. He'd be covered in blood for, weeks on end and just move on. And when his brother died when he was younger, his brother had an illness and died at a young age. He went to school the next day. They never dealt with it. So he made a connection from the time he was young. That's how you deal with death, is someone dies and you move on. And so you do that. And like I said before, eventually it'll sneak up. So I have a very unique experience, I guess, with PTSD, seeing it from that end. So yeah, that's just mine.
Now, that was a deep share. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
No,
Mandy,
don't
you
be sorry.
You made a comment that I think Dre, is that what his name, Dre had said as well. And so I was wondering if one of the Dr. Sherry's could answer, is it still more prevalent that male population is taught more to suck it up? Is that still sort of where we're at in 2022? Or are we moving in a way that it's not as frowned upon for them to seek mental health? Because that seems to be the common thing, like you're saying, is especially as a soldier, if you're in sort of those first responder jobs or any job, like you have to be that tough, suck it up, get it together. So are we making any progress, or what suggestions do you guys have that we could use to help our male students or friends? Or
what I try to do, because I am in a rural community, right, and it's very traditional and conservative, what I try to work with the teens and older adults too is we are conditioned to be in the man box, right? And then you add the other context of being in the military and service, and there's other stigmas and other norms and other expectations. And it's like, okay, you can feel feelings outside of this man box and still be in the man and have your manlyhood and still take care of everything you need to do, but it's going to be okay to really identify and express emotions, which would be sadness or fear or anxiety, of all those things. That makes you human. So it's really having that conversation and giving them permission to have the conversation, that all those feelings are expected, and you're entitled to those feelings. And just because you're a man and the conditions that are set in the community or in your society is not necessarily an accurate description of how to be a man.
And for me, being in Iowa at the moment, which is geographically different than Southern California, where I'm raised and trained, I see a real distinct difference with the male population here and the inability to communicate needs and feelings, and even the judicial system and the school system and everything really puts women second place when it comes to the court systems, when it comes to dealing with custody battles. It's a very male dominant world in Iowa. And so hopefully when more people can address mental health needs, that also can change from a geographic perspective.
I think I appreciate what you're saying too, and tethering on the PTSD when we're talking about that maleness, I guess, and being man box, is, there's that famous study that was done, and take the ACEs test, go through that screening and see if you've had any of this exposure. And it's like, oh, look, this happened to you and it's real. So guess what goes with those emotions with that experience too. And so it's a great entryway to really have a conversation too.
Are any of the Dr. Sherry's, are you certified in EMDR, in rapid eye movement?
I'm not.
You're not?
I am not.
You're not?
I'm not, but I did extensive training with Dr. Bruce Perry for the neurosequential model, and actually Vessel Vanderkork. So I have a lot of background in that, but no, we have a lot of practitioners up here that seem to specialize in that. So I'm okay with handing that off if that's.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do everything, Sherry. Yeah, it's quite an experience.
Yes, I've had it myself because I'm curious, and I have had, of course, in this field and in your life, you do have some traumatic experiences. So absolutely phenomenal. And it's been nice to be able to share that with people, because they'd come back to me after we'd collaborate. Like I'd make a referral, they'd do EMDR, and they'd still come back to me so we can work on some other things. And they would kind of go, this is kind of trippy. I don't understand this. How does this work?
Yes. It's like magic almost. And it's crazy.
Right. Yeah. It's like I'm moving my eyes and they've got this thing going on. Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, when my counselor suggested it, she said, go and do some research. I know how you are. You're going to want to know everything about it before, which I did. And I was skeptical, but yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It is. So. It is. And some people, they're just not at a place where either they're ready or they're receptive or whatever's going on. That
not for everybody. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. Are you familiar with that, Danielle? With EMDR?
I am. Well, yes, I'm familiar with it. I hear it's really wonderful. I have my own teen doing it right now from a traumatic event that he experienced. I think it's, just it's another wonderful tool, like Dr. Sedler was saying, that you can use, and it doesn't, you still come back and you may have other issues to work through, but I think
it's not a quick fix.
There's so many tools out there if we can keep bringing awareness to them. And but I've heard wonderful things about it, and I think
that's awesome.
I don't have any students who have done it. I work in a downtown LA and in a low, like I said, at Promise, and lower income area. So it's not something that unfortunately we've been able to offer to some of our students at this time, but I do hope that in the near future we will be able to, as we keep bringing more awareness to all the various mental health needs and the various ways that we can process through it. And I think that the misconception is that the only way to get through any issue is just to make an appointment with a counselor, sit on a couch and talk about them while we take notes. Isn't that like every movie we've all ever seen in our entire life? And there's like a billion other ways to get through it. So, or different things to do that I think it's really important. So I think that's cool that you brought that up. And
I'm just a seeker of knowledge always. I just want to know more. Teach me, let me try it. I'm always putting myself out there. I'm willing to try anything to, if it's going to better myself and make me more aware and knowledgeable. So.
Jessica, have you ever done anything like EMDR or anything?
I have not done EMDR. I had a boyfriend who did EMDR and had a lot of success with it. He nothing but good things to say about it. But personally, I've not. Just regular counseling and med appointments, because I'm bipolar, lots of med appointments.
Well, I think it's really commendable, Jessica, that you're so open about your struggle, or like that you have a lot of med appointments and that you're managing bipolar. And I think that the more people that are open with that kind of stuff and really normalize the issues that other people are going through, the better off as a society we will be.
I agree. I agree
that you do that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for pointing it out. And it means a lot to me and I mean, I'm sure you as a professional hear thanks all the time, but I get the same thing, tons of messages, thanks for saying it, because I felt this way and no one else would say it, and I know that there are many in the group that I administrate that have gone out and gotten help because we talk about it there. So that's a big deal,
I think there's a lot of right now, especially as Dre brought up, a lot of social media and access. And I think that gives our youth, or anyone really, this more of fear of missing out instead of addressing real issues a lot. Or we have a lot of people that may say mean things behind their keyboard, or just not realizing there's other people on the other end. So I think it's really cool that you're using your platform to show that there are real people going through real things, and it's not just about like living your best life all the time, because that's not always possible. Although, I mean, it's really cool to see. I just think it's great that you're using your...
Well, I'm going to ask her to share now that I've got somewhat of a vocal wax. We lost sound already. But Jessica, we want to have you share a little bit about bipolar, because that's the next statistic. I can speak English there. So can you tell me a little bit about your disorder? I don't want to say.
Absolutely. So I've always been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and on my journey for medication to help me not be suicidal. I found that medications were pushing me into mania, which showed that there's a good chance I should be diagnosed with bipolar. Diagnosing me with bipolar before that was hard to do because I don't have bipolar 1. So I've never hit full blown mania or psychosis. I don't stay up for days at a time or anything like that. So it was really hard to decide where to put me. It took years to find medications that work, and it took fighting on my own, showing up at the doctor's office. This isn't working. I need something else. Literally years, before I could be okay. And through that, and I guess I'm drilling this because anyone who's wanting to find help. We talked earlier about an easy fix, and it's just not. It's just not. And it's something that'll continually change too with other life events, and different triggers will come out of nowhere there, so it's not something that just happens overnight. It takes a lot of mindfulness, and by the time I had taken so many meds, I didn't know what thoughts were mine anymore. They make you feel different every day when you're on so many different ones. And I didn't even know who I was anymore after it all, So I guess that's my story. That's my bipolar.
Well, you are 2.8% of the population. So you're estimated to be about 7% people, 7 million of you running around. So meaning you are one of 7 million, maybe. Do you feel like a statistic?
I don't know. It's that statistics are hard for me because, like everyone has said, they think most of them should be higher. And I think that's probably true. Bipolar is one that I'm not sure should be higher though. And I would agree with the other ones. And the reason for that is because I think bipolar and borderline personality disorder are both diagnosed too easily. In fact, I saw when I was screaming for someone to please help me everywhere I could go. There's an urgent care here, and she took me in for less than 10 minutes and stamped me with, borderline personality disorder. And, so I would say that bipolar is probably often confused with other things, ADHD being one of the big ones, or ADD. I'm not sure what's proper there anymore, but that's a huge one that I think are swapped.
Yeah. Any of the doctors? Well, I'm going to jump in and say the bipolar has that 2.8. That borderline personality disorder has a 1.4 occurrence in the population. So even less likely. And you're kind of on the same page I am. Just I'm hearing more people talk about borderline personality disorder, but I don't know if I can necessarily say that I know someone who has that diagnosis. Do either of the Dr. Sherry's have any experience with anybody?
Not on that.
Without going too much in depth, you will know when you have someone who has that diagnosis.
That's what I thought. This is one of those ones, right?
They're just, yeah. They need you, then they hate you. They're pretty intense. They're really struggling, and interpersonal relationships are very, very difficult. And if you have a borderline personality person that is with you, you will know within the first hour, in my practice, of, they're really struggling. We really need to kind of get a hold of this and a deeper understanding of what's really going on, because that's a pretty significant diagnosis to give someone.
Yeah.
And so we want to be really mindful of that one. But my experience is, I don't know if it's because my experience working with emotionally disturbed children and adults and teens, it's like you just know when they walk in the room, it's like they're really struggling, and we really need to help any way we can, because they'll just keep cycling.
Yes. And
then the cocktail for medicines is tricky, and so it's a tough one. I know bipolar too is a tough one to really kind of rope in and manage, like you were saying, because a lot of people with bipolar, with certain medication, they feel really good to the point they want to get off their medication. So I'm fine, everything's great, until you have another cycle, and then you go, that did not work. So now we're going to go back to the drawing board. Borderline is a unique egg, unlike bipolar. They're quite different.
Quite different.
But, that our medical model has a tendency to kind of want to clump them together.
In that same kind of umbrella, right?
Right. Well, if you're bipolar, we might need to look at borderline. My experience has been, no, they're pretty different. They're pretty different.
They're two different people. Well, and obsessive compulsive disorder is the next one that they list. And that one also is a really low occurrence at 1.2% of the population. And that one, I have a little bit of experience with because we've had some personal friends who are diagnosed with that, as well as I have had a student. How much experience are you seeing with obsessive compulsive disorder?
It's been an interesting trajectory I've seen within the last year of people self-diagnosing and saying I'm OCD, and I'm like, well, what makes you feel that way? Well, you know, I want to have my pantry really much in order. I'm like, well, okay, but I'm not sure that's OCD. Do you have rituals? Do you have some routines? Do you have to have certain things that you can't sleep at night until you tap that door 5 times and then lock it? You know, I mean, there's some other things that are come into play besides being extremely organized or impulsive in certain areas. We have to look at a broader scope of things. But I think social media, and to be honest with you, and I'm not diminishing like Pandora or any of those stations where they'll give you these conditions. Are you feeling like you're over organizing things? Do you feel like, so it's like, well, hold on. I think it's great that we're having this conversation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're struggling with.
I might be struggling, but not necessarily need a diagnosis.
You might be really stressed out and things are going on, and right now I just need to organize something because I have no control over anything else right now. So that's fine. So I'm gonna control
That's what I do. I clean. When I'm stressed, I clean.
Exactly.
So usually when I'm cleaning, my husband will say, "What's wrong? Why are you on the floor on your hands and knees?" It's like, what? I'm fine. No, fine. Yeah. So it's a coping mechanism.
It is.
Your OCD just means right now I kind of got to get this done to manage my stress.
Well, it made me kind of think of, I think the term, like even bipolar, people use it so loosely now. They're just like, oh my gosh, you're so bipolar because you acted, you know, differently, or oh my gosh, look at you, you're OCD, you know, just that it's become like slang almost, or like, you know, just throwing it out there when someone does something, you know, which, you know, to me, if I was somebody like Jessica, you know, I'd be like offended, like you have no idea what that means. But that's just become like second nature for people just to throw that out when someone acts erratically. It's like, oh my gosh, she's so bipolar, you know, and
Yep.
it's sad that it's, you know, it's not taken seriously, because it is someone who has it, as you do, Jessica, knows that it's not something that, you know, you want. It's not something that you ever thought you'd have, and it's a struggle. So I think as professionals, as people who are working or been around, it's important, you know, that we don't perpetuate that using the terminology incorrectly, but people do all the time. So.
Well, the last one I really want to get into is schizophrenia, and that affects less than 1% of the population. Dr. Sedler?
Onset usually of schizophrenia starts in adolescence. When it starts raising its head, and it's pretty unique. And then sometimes when they're older, it's drug induced, right? If we're doing meth or heroin or other things, then that can really shift our neurological capacities. And sometimes it's hereditary. And some people will, unfortunately, when they're younger, will assume it's schizophrenia, but it could be a multitude of other things that are going on. Like I said, I don't mean to minimize schizophrenia, but if a teenager is not sleeping and they're doing Red Bulls for 3 days in a row, and all of a sudden they're seeing something move on the wall, okay, hold on. There's some other elements going on, but we seem to be really quick to put that diagnosis on. But historically, it will start, if it is the valid diagnosis, we can start seeing it as early as 15 and 16 years old.
Okay. Well, and with schizophrenia, it occurs so rarely that to really be seen, you almost got to be working in the mental health facilities. with the older population, I would feel.
I think I've heard in my collaboration with drug and alcohol programs and things like that, they're seeing schizophrenia on a rise.
Okay.
For a variety of different reasons. I couldn't answer why that is. Are we being more educated because we're bringing mental health awareness, or is it because drug-induced psychosis is happening? I'm just not sure, which comes first.
More homeless.
I'm sorry.
Just more homeless, like you said, makes sense that there's more homeless now, which means there's more drug,
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is.
Well, and see a rise in it as they use drugs as a coping mechanism for becoming homeless, and see that increase. I wouldn't be surprised if we see all these numbers rise over the next couple of years. Maybe not so much the OCD and borderline and bipolar, but the rest of it definitely would be affected by COVID.
I would think we're going to see a rise in all of it. Drugs and alcohol affect our brains in different ways for all of us. And there's a lot of self-medicating going on. There's a lot of self-medicating that a lot of people do. That's a very, very, very popular thing to just numb the pain. So I don't know that we can say that, oh, it's not going to cause borderline personality disorder. It's not going to cause, because we really don't know what the effects are as things get more potent, as things get more addictive, as people are mixing different things in our own brain. We could already be susceptible to. That could just be a trigger. So I think it's really important to, if anyone is struggling with mental health, to not self-medicate. And that's really hard not to do, because I think that's a very popular way of doing it. If you know a friend is going through something, like, let's go out and get a drink, let's go out and do this, and so I think it's hard to get away from that. But it's probably, in my opinion, one of the most important things when it comes to mental health that we need to focus on is substance abuse.
Oh, for reals. And the next fact I want to share, it ties into that comment so much with Danielle. It's, despite the fact 50% of people suffering from mental illness do not seek treatment, on average, it takes someone who is seeking help 11 years from once they experience it till they start seeing solutions and getting diagnosis. So some of these stats that the American Health Association shared was that it was literally 50% of people are not seeking help. Do you think it's going to get worse?
I don't know that everyone knows that they're self-medicating. That would be if Dr. Sedler could answer. I think sometimes people don't know that that's what they're suffering from, and they quickly find themselves doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And I don't think that it's like maybe a deliberate act all the time, that it's a sort of a snowball effect. You're in a bad place, you start drinking, then all of a sudden it's worse, you're drinking more. Like, it's a snowball effect. I don't think people are like, I think I'm bipolar, I'm going to go out and get wasted to get rid of it. I think it's maybe a unconscious or side effect, but it's definitely something that Dr. Sedler would have to answer. That's just what I see in my schools or in my experience.
I think I could speak to, the stigma behind people seeking treatment. There are those factors that you were talking about with substance use and the normalization of, as an adult, I can drink and I can use substance, I can do marijuana, I can do whatever to cope. But I know that the stigma and the shame and the fact that you go to treatment means, unfortunately, things are going to change and you're going to have some work to do. And it isn't just where you just go talk about your feelings and go away. It's like, we're going to generate and talk and touch some stuff that's going to feel really uncomfortable and awkward. And your family members are going to start noticing. And then we're changing the dynamic there. And then what the heck? Now everything's just gotten whack and this is not helping me. So I'm just going to not do it.
I work for the alcohol industry, and we've had record like millions of cases above projections in the last 2 years. Like, it's insane how much money that the company I work for has made. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and it's kind of sad for me to think that, you know, we contribute to that that factor. But I mean, definitely, I can't even begin to tell you how prevalent. And when you watch like market trends and you're in that side of it, you know, it's always in the back of my head, because I'm a child of an addict and an alcoholic. And so in the back of that's always deterred me to not do these things. But just watching the availability of alcohol, drugs, and things, like, you know, and having teenagers, and me trying to set limits and boundaries with them, and saying, well, we're going to go to a family's house or do something, and then I have family members that are smoking marijuana in the back corner, or, you know, drinking and stuff like that. And it's really disheartening that, you know, when you're trying to raise children, that you're trying to keep them, you know, but people are like, oh, they're going to do it anyways, it's just normal, like, it's fine, you know. And it just, like, is shocking to me. But then, you know, people say, well, you work in the alcohol industry, you know, like, you know that this is a thing. And it's like, no, I'm not going to normalize it. I'm not going to say that it's okay. I'm still going to say you need to wait to appropriate age. You still need to, you know, I've never done drugs ever my entire life, not even marijuana, nothing. And, you know, people are like, oh, you're just so goody, you don't, you know. It's like, no, I've seen what it can do, so I choose not to. But, you know, it's the ready to drink category is what we call it, is the fastest growing they've ever seen. Like the hard seltzers and like the mix that looks like cans, it looks like a soda can, right? They know how to market, they know how to, you know, draw you in. And we are a society, like we said before, that's, you know, we want that instant gratification. Like, we don't want to have to mix a drink. Let me just go buy it and it's ready to drink, and I can just, you know, drink it on my way home or whatever. So it's out there. They know how to market. They know how to market to the younger age. It's just insane. So just as a side note, I mean, it's, you know, in terms of like substance abuse and stuff, you know, I struggle with getting so much alcohol that I bring home, and it's like, okay, I have teenage children, you know, how do I monitor this and keep it healthy? How do I show them that it's okay to drink? Like, my son will say, like, oh, you're having a glass of wine. Yeah, I'm having a glass of wine. You can have a glass of wine, right? What's appropriate? So, you know, seeing that, and then going to a party where people are out of control because they're not using it appropriately. So yeah, it's just as a side. So it was just, you know, noting that, yeah, substance abuse, and how I can see, like Danielle said, how it can just start to snowball, especially during the pandemic. I'm sure so many people were just sitting at home drinking constantly because we made millions and millions of dollars off of that. So
I think Iowa is one of the leading states.
You're one of the contributing.
Especially the
and Sherry too. Yeah.
Wine is very difficult.
Why not?
A glass of wine in Iowa, though there's some wineries, but beer is very nice. It is just almost endemic.
Yeah.
I think you saying that, you know, your teenagers, I can openly attest to my teenager being far more well-behaved than I was as a teenager. I definitely was like, I don't know what I was doing, but it wasn't making super great choices. So I definitely I see where that happened. So I'm not above, I think, the self-medicating, especially if you have different things. I think it's being aware of that. Like you said, like you chose never to do anything because you had seen what had happened. I think we all have our different approaches that we take, but yeah, I think that we're going to see a bigger rise, especially as we have more substance abuse. And I think, like,
my son,
so much easier. It's so easier.
I'm sure you working with adolescents. I mean, my son tells me the availability of drugs at school. I mean, my son and I are very close, so he tells me things that I'm just like mortified how easily available, and for free. Like, they just want to get you hooked and here you go. And he doesn't go to the bathroom at school because it's just a place where everybody can, get high, and so it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. Yeah. So
I'm going to swing this conversation. We're going to talk for a second about what if I am that 1 in 5? What if I am myself? What if I'm Jessica? How do I go about getting help, tools?
Trying to get help was hard. And I think, as you're mentioning the 50%, don't get help, I'm wondering where the percentage, do they lie in the not getting help, or do they lie in the getting help but never finish? Because there's a large amount of them that call and you don't get an appointment for 3 months. Well, whatever. I needed you today. And I wonder where those people lie, because I know there are a lot of them. It took fighting with everything I had in me to stay alive, to find the help that I needed. So I started with whatever insurance I had at the time, and I called for therapists, and it took weeks to get in for therapy, and even longer to get in to be medicated. And I just had to had to wait it out. I found different groups that I could go to. A lot of them felt very much like AA, or that's more like what it was. But all resources, friends, family, whatever I could do to keep myself going until I finally had those appointments. And once you have those appointments, your first appointments aren't going to be the ones. They're just not. And I want people to know that you're going to have to find a therapist that works with you, and there's a lot that goes into that too. And you'll also have different therapists or counselors throughout life that fit different portions of your life and what you're going through. It's not going to be the same person the whole time. And a lot of people don't realize that. I think they think they're going to go get help. They're going to get this one magic person that's going to give them maybe a magic drug, who knows? And that's not, it is a fight. And it is possible to do.
I think you speak that very well. It is a fight. It is recognizing multiple symptoms. It's recognizing that it's happening a long period of time. It's something I know for me and my ADHD, it took me a long time to learn some coping skills. I think when they diagnosed me, it wasn't even an actual diagnosis of ADHD. It was, I think they called it immaturity. Dr. Sedler, does that sound about right for 1980? And I think as time has gone by and as I've gotten tools myself, I have found things that have worked for me and therapists that have worked for me. And I don't think I would have if I had not had somebody saying, see these patterns. But I know for other people like you, Jessica, where you had your own patterns, you were living in it, it wasn't something that you had to have somebody else show you. And I think that's what makes mine a little bit different than yours is on a daily, I think I fluttered through so many things that I wouldn't notice for quite a bit that I was struggling until I looked behind me and saw all the burning piles and fridges and everything else that I had left in the back. But it is that recognizing that you're unwell and seeing those commonalities and then fighting that fight. I know Danielle and Mandy and both the Dr. Sherry's, the fight is probably the underline of what you guys stand for, right?
I just had an incident with this last week with a very young child that was talking about how sad he was and he didn't like school and he just felt he just wanted to just commit suicide. I mean, you're talking about a third grader. And it was like trying to almost diffuse him and talk about the great things. I was like, look at you're starting to read. He's already been detained once. He's filled with learning difficulties, and whether or not he's being handled right is a different story. But he was reaching out with this group, wanting help. And another teacher and I sat and talked with him, and she was right on saying, it sounds like you really need a hug. Let's just talk about who can go to you. May I hug you? And let's put 3 things down that you're really happy about, and who would you like to talk to? And I wrote a letter that night to the head of that department at that school district, and he got in the next day in order to see a counselor. And so when I saw him yesterday, he was feeling really much better. He was talking about excitement and different things. So I was really pleased that there was this recognition with not only peers, but with us as specialists, and that the school district actually acting on it and having him being able to get immediate services to at least talk to someone.
I think recognizing the symptoms of being mentally well, I'm going to list off a couple of symptoms. If I forget anything, let me know. Insomnia, agitation, loss of appetite, social withdrawal, emotional numbness, inability to concentrate, excessive fear and worry, and then interest in self-harm, and a loss of overall interest. Anybody else have any other symptoms they want to add to that?
I don't have anything to add for the symptoms, Kate, but I appreciate you sharing that. I just wanted a tidbit to say, if you are seeking out, and Jessica did a great job too about that, fighting that fight. And if you did land and found someone you want to finally get into and talk to, give them 3 sessions. Try 3 times. And if after 3 times you're still not feeling like there's a good connection for whatever reason for you, then go find someone else and start that journey. But give it at least 3 tries first.
Super fair.
Yeah,
for sure.
So beyond reaching out, there's going to be a big resource drop after this. I've got several handouts with several phone numbers, and we'll put those attached to the video so that people can download them. But when they're reaching out for help and you're giving them 3 times, what type of help am I looking for, Dr. Sedler? Am I looking for an in-person, or what type of help would I be looking for?
That's a really broad question.
I'm sorry.
And I'm probably not the best person to ask that to, because I'm so broad in my approach. It's going to be based on your need and what you're presenting, and your personality and my personality, and how we can do this dance to get to know each other and to figure out what's the best fit for you. And I'm not a one-stop shop person. I'm not just a, cognitive behavioral therapist. Might do some experiential stuff. I might do some other stuff. So for me, it's going to take some time to get to know you. You get to know me. This platform might work for some people, which it does. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes it needs to be in person. So I wish I could say, sure, A, B, C, and D, and there you go. And for some people, then you meet me and you'd go, yeah, you're not my fit. And that's okay. I'm not that kind of person. So it's a unique blend, because as therapists or psychotherapists or clinicians, however you want to identify yourself, we all have different approaches, and we lean to and resonate for different things that make sense to us, that we can offer to help heal people. So being mindful of that somebody might just do EMDR and that's all you're going to do. Well, wait, maybe I want to talk about family dynamics and communication skills with my partner. Oops, maybe this isn't the good fit for that.
Maybe this isn't the right one. You said 3 times. What about trying, when you call, you often call a center and they have a multiple of therapists available. Would you suggest calling them and then utilizing several of their therapists, or switching companies? I think is what I'm trying to get at.
I think that's dependent on your journey. You know, if you aren't finding the fit and you're going to therapist to therapist to therapist, that might be an issue. And you certainly can go to find somebody who's not in an agency, more private practice, or somebody who does cash pay versus the medical insurance policy. I mean, there's just a lot of different variables, which I think Jessica was kind of alluding to. It's like all these different hoops you jump through. You know, if you're in an agency, one agency says, well, I'm going to schedule for you an intake, and then I'm going to connect you to this person, and then maybe to your therapist. It's going to take about 3 to 4 months. Okay, just be mindful knowing when you're going into an agency, that's how that rolls. Versus to somebody in a private practice, I may put you on a wait list. I'm going to get to you, but this is how this process rolls. And unfortunately, you'll find 3 times, maybe that's not a good fit. So I got to find somebody else. It's tricky. And I know up in my area, there's not a lot of clinicians up here. So it makes it even harder, which just breaks my heart, because I wish we could have many more services available, but we don't. It's, you know, I mean, I'm the only one in my entire county that works with teens. That's not okay. That's not okay. But what can I do about that? I can send them to behavioral health. That's going to be a 6-month journey just to get in. And then it's going to be another 6 months journey to see a psychiatrist, which is a telehealth psychiatrist. So it's just dependent on your environment, where you live, what resources are available. I mean, it takes some resiliency and tenacity and commitment to yourself to say, I want to get better, and this is important to me, and I'm going to find it, and I'm going to make it work.
You really touched on it, Sherry. The encouraging your community and really encouraging the community to invest in mental health, giving access points. That's one of the big pushes from the American Mental Health Association this year, was the community and connecting and drawing that connection. So I've got a couple sources up on the board for that. With that being said, what do you do in your communities? And I'm just going to have you do a brief little overview of what you do in your community, each one of you, because you each bring something to the community. And then how could we help you broaden that? And I'll start with Jessica.
Oh, I'm already. This is a good time for me.
So good time. Jerry's in that too.
They're good time.
The main thing that I provide for the community is the group that I have online, making sure that I talk about my ups and my downs, not just when life is grand, and allowing them to know that normalizing it from every possible aspect. From getting a therapist to taking medicine to not taking medicine, all the things that we worry about or someone has told us is not okay, I want them to know is okay. And that's mostly what I do.
Mandy.
So for me, I was thinking of something when Sherry Sedler was talking, is reaching out to people that are professionals and asking them for suggestions. Psychology Today, someone had told me about that resource, and it triggered me to share it on Facebook and say, hey, if any of you are looking for therapists, this is a great way to find a therapist. I take suggestions from all sorts of people, and I always share. I'm not afraid to share and say, hey, this is, my son had this therapist for many years. He's great. If anybody out there is looking for information. My company has an employee assistance program, and I think those are underutilized a lot. People don't know that they exist. My counselor told me that my company was one of hers, so I ended up getting 5 sessions free a year. So, hey, I'll take it. So making connections with that, I've always kind of worked in human resources support. And so a lot of times I think within my my networks of people. So sharing those resources that are out there, free resources, you know, if you can share and connect with the community, those are highly underutilized. Highly underutilized. It's really sad when you look at and you see like only 10 people out of, you know, an organization of thousands never used it. So I think if there's free things out there, just like continually, like Jessica, just to share and be an open book and a resource for people. That's kind of where a lot of people come to me, because I do share so often. And so I've created sort of a network of people to say, hey, I have a friend who's struggling. She has a kid who's, you know, this or that. And they say, oh, I have the perfect counselor for them, you know, tell them to reach out to so-and-so. And so I think developing a network within the community of people, like-minded people and professionals, I think has been successful for me.
Great.
So basically, what I do in my community is I throw a bunch of community events that are based around bringing awareness to why we love each other and why we love our home and why that is special to us. So what we do is we've done, like, when there was a fire, we had the fire relief where we handed out free food and we introduced everybody to the fire department. We, you know, host sushi parties and beach parties, and we do listening parties for at-risk youth and just young creatives in our area. We'll throw like little parties for them to kind of release their music and their art to others. We got our hands on a lot of different things. I actually do events with the mayor as well. So I was doing a event where we were talking about mental health and homelessness within the community and about ways that we could try to better get the homeless into housing, because housing is tremendously cheaper than even just one visit to the hospital for some of these patients. And and I help students who are also working on trying to get extra credits and volunteer in the community and stuff so that they could actually graduate. We have some students that are go to a continuation school, and some of them are dealing with family issues as well as drug addiction and stuff. And so I'll meet with these students one-on-one outside of school, and we'll go hang out around town, and I'll get them involved in some of these community events that we're doing so that they could just kind of see things from a different perspective, as well as see men sharing their feelings and being expressive. And it's not all about the bravado, but about just kind of like coming out and, you know, being vulnerable and just enjoying each other's company in the nature.
Excellent. I'm going to go with Dr. Sherry Center.
So I have a little special needs in my arms at the moment. What I'm really trying to do is get teachers in particular to understand social emotional needs. And so I'm really pushing that it's not all about academics, but it's the social emotional competencies that we really need to look at and we need to address. And so a lot of my energies go into that, developing teacher trainings and working with a very diverse population so that they understand the social emotional aspects of children and families. And then the other thing that when I'm reading IEPs, I really take note of some of the psychologists that I like their reports, the detail that I have seen and the ways that they have made recommendations. And so I keep track of that. So when I have a client that I'm working with, I have some good recommendations that I can share with them. There's a couple really good groups here, particularly with play therapy with the young ones, with group therapy, and with individualized therapy. And so I hold on to those names in order to help others that may be in need.
Dr. Sherry Sedler.
Okay, so I do a couple of different things. Once, I opened my private practice in a specific location because there wasn't anybody local to the elementary and high school. So I wanted to have access so kids could walk from school to my office, just to make it easier for everybody involved, families and so forth, because transportation is an issue. did that to reach that need. I'm on the mental health. I'm a board member of the county mental health because that's important to me, that we ensure that we're getting services to everybody in this community and outreach and so forth. I developed this compassion fatigue project, which I got funding through County Behavioral Health and the Calaveras County Office of Education. And so what I do with that is I go to our administrators, our personnel, our certificated and classified staff to see and help minimize and reduce burnout, fatigue, and mental health, spread and mental health awareness. So for example, like this week, I went to a certain high school and I provided each day a mental health basket that was raffled off to staff so they could take some time out for themselves and really regroup. And then I also target and am part of many committees that on different campuses all throughout the county to address mental health needs and mental wellness on campus for everyone. We have a lot of funding in California for social emotional for kids, but we don't for our adults and our staff. And I think I'm a little biased that they need help too. And so lots of times I will just come and either hang out with a superintendent or a principal or assistant principal or a clinician or a school counselor or a school psychologist. And we hang out and we just talk, and it's a safe space for them. And I get to see them and hear them and validate them. And that's super special to me to do and give back to my community, because when I was in the trenches, I really didn't have that. So I'm really pretty passionate about that. And I've had the beautiful opportunity to collaborate with Kate now and really spread some more awareness. And I also have an LLC corporation, which is, I'm a mental health specialist and do consulting work as well. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for mental health, as you can see.
You're definitely in the community. Well, next I'm going to go with Danielle.
So I help students from an educational standpoint, Monday through Friday. I help students realize that they're not alone. And even though that they're coming back to high school, that doesn't mean that they can't have a future. It's really important to me that all of our students know that they're not alone, and that that's okay if you're coming back or you struggled or whatever derailed you. You could still go to a 4-year if you want. We do a lot. I am a CTE counselor, which is career technical educational counselor. So we have an IT, but we have different pathways. I try and get most of our students into one of those because college is not for everyone. And so I think a lot of times when people are coming back to high school, they think like, I'll just have to get my diploma and then I have nothing more I can do. And I think it's so important for everyone to know they have so much more to offer, and that it's really important that they came back and that they may not have that support at home, or maybe they do, or whatever, like I said, derailed them, but I'm their biggest champion and I will help them in any way I can. I also have a nonprofit, I'm a founder of a nonprofit. I sit on the board now called Station Kid, and we help critically ill children of first responders. We help as like the whole family, just providing with resources because they have a tendency to not ask for help in any capacity, and their significant other or their child who is sick is really struggling, and so we try and provide wraparound services for that. And then I volunteer as a domestic violence advocate, and so I work closely with one of our nonprofits locally to help families that have been victims of domestic violence and child abuse, and providing either the counseling services they need that I'm equipped to provide them with, and if I'm not, referring them to the correct people and bringing in the resources and getting them in touch with the resources. Along with what Jessica was saying and everyone else has been saying, it is sometimes so hard to just get the resources that you need. So I try really hard to make sure that I can provide them with resources I know are going to be helpful. And then other than that, I provided my local community with 2 amazing children who terrorize them on a regular basis. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Danielle. in the community and to our broader audience, I want to make sure they know that there are tools they may not be. And what I wanted to point out was that all of these people are involved in the mental health community, and besides Dr. Sedler, none of them are providing therapy sessions. What we do instead is promote it, advocate it, and then make sure resources are getting out there. And this is something I really want to focus on for our audiences. Look for those resources. Don't make sure you're looking under just therapy. There's more than one out there. Touch any place that you feel comfortable. That way you can get those resources. We actually got this little spot talked about and sponsored by another community resource. I'm going to say, Sean, forward that slide. Nikki G is a friend of mine and probably a friend of a couple of people on our board. She's a phenomenal percussionist, and over the COVID, she had a moment where she was like, I need to do something for my mental health. And so she wrote an entire soundtrack of her day with a mixture of, what does she call it? It's vibration and Dr. Sedler, you probably know this, the music where we play the sounds in harmony. And I'm doing a little gold thing as I do this. Sound bath. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Am I right, Dr. Sedler? Okay. So she wrote her music with sound baths in them, and she did it to help the emotional state as you listen to the music. So you are supposed to go on an emotional journey as you listen to her songs. And she let us give a shout out about her music, even though she wasn't able to join us today. Within that community, and the next few slides are going to be on the community and the community that we are. One of the biggest things is we do provide community resources, and I want everybody to be able to get in touch with each one of you. So when we go over your Keynote page, make sure you guys give out where they can find information, because I definitely want our audience, if they are looking to expand their knowledge more or reach out to you specifically, to be able to do that. And then immediately we go into someone's quote. We but mirror the world, all the tendencies present in the outer world. If that is your quote, go ahead and tell me about where to find you.
You can reach me or text me or call me at 209-890-8014. Email is Sherry Sedler, first and last name, @gmail.com. Working on all that other social media stuff, haven't gotten there yet. And you can always reach out to Kate. She knows how to find me.
I do. I suck. Well, and next we have Dr. Sherry Center.
Well, the easiest way to reach me is actually going through Kate, since I'm out of state quite a bit, but I can be reached. My phone number is 949-338-8187. Leave a message and I will definitely get back to you. And if you need to contact me by email, it's drsherrycenterllc@gmail.com.
And just in time for Dre to tell us about himself.
So if you are looking to find me, I'm pretty easy to find. Dre, DREDA space DRE. If you Google me, I'm all over everything. You could go to my Linktree or my Patreon, my Instagram. Everything is Dre. Yeah, I think the Linktree might be one of the best ways to find me. So I'll send that into. Yeah. I'm everywhere. So yep.
So the easiest way to find me is in the Self-Love Club group on Facebook. And you can join that group really easily by going to www.pureselflove.com. That also has a lot of my story there and some other things that I do. and you'll be able to join the group right there, get a free sticker if you like. And you can contact me there even outside of the group. So maybe you don't have a Facebook, you can go to that website and you can send me messages right through that website. If you do want to text me, that would be 480-399-6516. And my email would be Jess, Jess, at lovejessxoxo.com.
I can be found on Facebook and Instagram, just my first and last name, Mandy Gonzalez. I can also be reached at mandygonzalez@yahoo.com. If you want to reach out to me personally, my phone number is 209-585-5617.
I am not, I guess, as easy to find. So I don't have my first and last name on any social media. So, but I am linked to AMP Education, so you could find me through there. Or you can email me directly at daniellepeterson@gmail.com or danielle@stationkid.org. And you can call or text me at 562-704-6495.
But this time I'd like to take a moment and thank you guys so much for participating with me and having me here. I can be reached at ampeducationllc.com, at that same at Gmail. You can stalk me on Instagram, Facebook. As a matter of fact, you probably don't need to stalk me. I'll stalk you. So just reach out. Okay. All right. And so moving on to our last slide. This is going to be a huge resource drop. So this is 4.5 pages of numbers, but these are the resources for crisis across the nation and other mental health resources that is being provided by the Mental Health Association of America. So there's 3 pages of numbers, and I like to hand this one out honestly to, I'm going to name drop Tina, and she's in the military, and occasionally some of these ladies and gentlemen need other resources, and this is one of those lists I like to send to her so that she just always has it. That way when they have somebody who needs a resource, she has that number. We will make those available for download after the show. If you guys need more tools or more information about where we got this information, please check out these references. Thank you guys so much for participating. We've had a great time talking about mental health, and we will be doing the mindfulness and why you want to be mindfulness as our start topic. And that will be hosted through our Patreon, which is the newest addition to the AMP family, and we'll be hosting our mental health. If you guys have further questions, please let us know. I'd like to take this time to thank our keynote speakers and panel. Thanks, guys.
Yay! Good job.
Can we
Can
edit
you-
it out?
Jessica, your puppy is so cute.
Keep it real.
Hello, Zane.
Wow,
was
nice to
fun.
meet all of you.
I feel really honored to hear your stories, get your opinions. I feel like this was really amazing. It was really nice to meet you all.
Back at you.
Unfortunately
Great
for
work.
me, I have a 7-year-old that I can hear is still not actually in bed. So I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes that I keep hearing, like, I'm all brush your teeth. I hear the water turn on for 1 second. So I'm going to have to excuse myself because tomorrow morning, I need to at least start off my drive on a high note and not
Yeah.
exactly leave them on the side of the road. So or safe surrender them to the nearest fire station. So, but
All
it was
right,
really
everybody.
wonderful to meet all of you, and I hope to speak with you guys soon.
Yes.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Danielle.
Have a good night.
Jessica, same to you. Mandy.
Bye.
Sherry.
Bye.
Bye,
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night. Bye.